Joan Rivers left an incredible mark on comedy and show business.
She has more balls than any male comic I've ever met.
She was a trailblazer, a pioneer in that respect.
If you talk about the Mount Rushmore of comedy, Joan's face is up there. They'd have to recarve it a few times, but she's up there.
This is historic. Grand Central Terminal. Joan Rivers' career started right here in 1958.
Joan Rivers was meant to be famous.
She said that when she did the Second City, she learned for the first time that what she thought was funny to other people as well.
Many celebrities run up to Joan and say, I knew I was famous when you made fun of me the first time.
This is where Joan Rivers was living when she got the tragic news about her husband Edgar's suicide.
Joan just dropped to her knees.
She seriously considered killing herself. But her motto was, never quit, never give up, never, never, never.
She's that old cliche about the phoenix rising from the ashes.
Joan's obsession with plastic surgery is because of her low self-esteem.
She had an endoscopy at a clinic when something went wrong.
She was so brave and bold, and she was such a huge personality.
She left us with so much.
For every celebrity icon, there were places where life-changing events happened, events that shaped and impacted who they became. For groundbreaking comedian Joan Rivers, it was her childhood neighborhood of Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where a contentious relationship with her mother would have major repercussions for the rest of her life. The Adelphi Academy, the high school where she dreamed of becoming a star. Grand Central Terminal, where, as a struggling performer, she did her first headshots in a photo booth. The Second City Theater in Chicago, where she gained confidence after years of rejection. The luxurious estate in Bel Air, California, where she lived with her husband Edgar and daughter Melissa. And the health clinic on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where a botched surgery prematurely ended her life in 2014. Joan Rivers is born Joan Alexandra Molinsky on June 8, 1933, in middle-class Crown Heights, Brooklyn. The family lives in this apartment building on Eastern Parkway before moving to a brownstone a mile down the road at the corner of Eastern Parkway and New York Avenue. Leslie Bennett is the author of the Joan Rivers biography, Last Girl Before Freeway.
Joan's story is a very unusual story of someone who didn't necessarily start out with such stellar natural equipment that you would look at them and say, this person's destined to be a star.
Joan's parents, Meyer and Beatrice Molinsky, are Jewish immigrants from Russia. And while her father was a doctor and the family lived comfortably, the Molinskys aren't as upwardly mobile as Beatrice hoped. Marcia Teisling was Joan's personal assistant in the 1980s.
Joan didn't really share a lot about her history. She would talk about her parents fondly. Joan's father was a doctor, but he was the kind of doctor that was trading chickens for his services.
He was somebody who was apparently a hopeless businessman because he was constantly having to rent a truck and move out of an office at 3 o'clock in the morning because of his failure to pay his rent and staying one step ahead of the creditors.
Beatrice Molinsky is a social climber and clashes with her husband Meyer about money, or more accurately, their lack of money.
Joan's mother was extremely unhappy with the fact that she wasn't married to a rich guy. And so there was a tremendous amount of conflict in the home. A lot of unhappiness, parents screaming at each other. The mother would go out and buy a mink coat, which they couldn't afford, and the father would have a complete meltdown.
Audrey Lambert was Joan's best friend in high school.
Her mother was a very interesting lady. She carried herself like royalty. Joan's mother had very high standards for her girls. Now, some people would call it strict, some people would say social climbing, but it was known that Beatrice Molinsky had wonderful standards for her girls.
Beatrice's high expectations and old country standards of propriety bring her into constant conflict with her teenage daughter. And Joan's inability to live up to those expectations brings on a series of problems: self-esteem, body image, and anxiety that linger with her for the rest of her life.
Her self-esteem was terrible. She was driven by feeling bad about herself from a very early age. She felt she wasn't pretty enough. Her sister was smarter. She wasn't popular. She didn't really know how to make friends.
I think she had a hang-up about her weight. Now, I didn't think she was heavy. I just thought she was cute. And of course, her personality would have overcome any shortcomings she had.
Cliff Nesteroff is an author and podcaster known as the Human Encyclopedia of Comedy.
A lot of comedians' insecurities or neuroses, it's very Freudian, comes from childhood probably, comes from the parents, lack of approval from your parents. So with Joan Rivers, she was trying to overcome that, trying to balance it out, trying to outrun it, try to placate her parents.
But luckily for Joan, she learns how to make people laugh at a very early age.
When she was in preschool, she was cast as a kitty in this preschool play, and she had these pink kitty ears, and she got up on stage, and everyone loved her and laughed, and it was like a drug, and she was an addict for the rest of her life. She said it was the most wonderful feeling I'd ever had. I could get up on a stage and make people love me, and she chased that feeling until literally the day she died. To her, that was the cure she was always seeking for this, terrible feeling of inadequacy.
Joan attends Adelphi Academy, a private high school in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn.
I went to Adelphi Academy in Brooklyn, and in my class was Joan Malinsky. I guess we were about 13 when we first met, and of course she was absolutely hysterical even then. Very wonderful sense of humor, and so much fun to be with, and we spent as much time together as we could. We are on Lafayette Avenue in front of what was Adelphi Academy. It has been completely redone and is now part of Pratt Institute. The last time I was here, I'm pretty sure, was when I graduated in 1950.
While attending Adelphi Academy, future funny girl Joan Malinsky develops a passion for performing.
Joan had been involved in drama every year since we hit high school. And she asked me senior year if I would get involved with her because we were involved in everything together, so it kind of made sense. So we wrote the show, directed it, produced it, did the dance steps, wrote the songs, and it was an incredible success. We just had such a good time doing it.
As Joan gets older, the pressure from her parents to marry a stable, professional man becomes intolerable for her.
When Joan got in her later teens, her mother decided that Joan and her sister had to be married off to, eligible young men, preferably a doctor or a lawyer. She only cared about launching her career, and her parents were furious about it, and it caused, many years' worth of really, really bitter conflict.
But Joan scuttles her parents' plans. She remains single and doggedly pursues her passion, and the career path she chooses, show business, agitates her parents even more.
Her parents were totally opposed to her being a performer, partly because they didn't think she had any talent. They told her all the time she was terrible, she had no talent.
But Joan wasn't going to start listening to her parents' criticism, even when a gig at their beach club goes horribly wrong.
She was asked to perform at their beach club, and she bombed so badly that the parents tried to sneak out through the kitchen, and yet she just couldn't give up this dream that she was meant to be famous.
And it would be here, at this iconic New York train terminal, where the comedian would take her first tentative step towards superstardom.
It's pretty awesome that this is where Joan Rivers' career started, right here in Grand Central Terminal in 1958. She got her headshots taken at a photo booth.
For every celebrity icon, there were places where life-changing events happened, events that shaped and impacted who they became. For the early life of trailblazing comedian Joan Rivers, those places are in Brooklyn. The family home off of Eastern Parkway, where she would clash with her parents about money, status, and her direction in life. And Adelphi Academy, a high school in Clinton Hill, where she became friends with Audrey Lambert and cultivated her love of performing. By the early 50s, the Malinsky family had moved from Brooklyn to the leafy suburb of Larchmont in Westchester County. Living at home in her 20s meant that she had to hear the constant drumbeat from her mother. When are you going to get married?
She claimed that her mother was so desperate to marry her off that she put a sign on a stake in the front yard saying, "Last girl before freeway," in hopes of unloading her on some passing guy.
Joan commutes from Larchmont to Barnard College on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And after she graduates, she takes jobs at the Lord & Taylor department store and then Bond clothing retailers, where she finally meets a man who could make her mother happy.
She went to work there as a copywriter, and the next thing I knew, she dated this guy named Jimmy Sanger, and all of a sudden she was marrying him, and little did I know, his family owned Bond stores, so that was pretty impressive. Well, that marriage was very short-lived.
Joan has the marriage annulled after just 6 months when she discovers that Jimmy doesn't want children. Joan's parents are mortified. And at the age of 25, Joan Malinsky is alone again, but free to chase her dream. Every day, she takes the train from Larchmont to Grand Central Terminal, where she scours classified ads and pounds the pavement looking for an agent and a gig. Chrissy Mayer is a New York-based stand-up comedian.
This is historic. Grand Central Terminal is the grandest of all the terminals in New York City. Joan Rivers' career started right here in 1958. She had to go with a newspaper every morning into Grand Central and like a pen and like sit down and find the back pages and like find the theater and comedy opportunities. Like, I just don't know how she did it.
It's also in this legendary New York train terminal where the cash-strapped future comedy star takes her very first promotional headshots, taken at a photo booth for a quarter. Joan then begins passing her 8x10s to New York agents with the hopes of attaining representation. But she quickly learns that the male-dominated world of stand-up comedy is not so accommodating to women performers.
When Joan Rivers first started in comedy, women were not allowed on stages, and when they got up there, they weren't allowed to talk about their own experiences.
Susan Lucci is an Emmy Award-winning actress and was a close friend of Joan's.
That really was a man's world, especially at that time. And she wasn't afraid. She was a trailblazer, a pioneer in that respect.
It's amazing that she was able to do it at all.
Joan doesn't let rejection deter her. She doggedly takes any gig she can get.
When she got booked, it would be in horrendous places. She got booked at some strip joint in Boston, and the agent who sent her said, "We're going to call you Pepper January, Comedy with Spice." That was her strip club name, and she got booed off the stage.
Rejection comes swiftly and regularly for Joan Pepper January Malinsky. But she soldiers on, undeterred, looking to prove herself right and her parents wrong.
There were these ghastly disasters. Like at one point, she was asked to perform at their beach club, and she bombed so badly. Everybody was just mortified because she was so awful. And her parents finally laid down the law and said, "You've got to stop this. This is ridiculous, you know, get real." And Joan was furious that they wouldn't support her ambitions. And she You know, she left home and she was essentially homeless for a while, yet she just couldn't give up this dream that she was meant to be famous.
After getting kicked out of her parents' house, Joan takes up residence at a Manhattan YWCA and develops a new stage tactic, talking about the details of her own life.
Joan was the first comedian to really start talking about her life.
Joan Rivers was maybe the first woman of her generation to go on stage and speak about her experience, about being a single woman, about the fear of becoming a so-called spinster, about the pressure from her Jewish family about getting married. She even made references, very subtle, to things like the pill, to contraception, abortion, without saying those words, but there was an undercurrent where you knew. So for that reason, she was the precursor to all the women in stand-up that followed.
An agent named Tony Rivers tells Joan that she needs a stage name, something catchier than Valinsky, and she agrees and takes his name. And in 1961, the newly christened Joan Rivers gets her first break, a gig at the Second City in Chicago.
The story goes that she auditioned, that she was in a waiting room with 170 other women. She was the last one called up. She was tired, she was aggravated, she was annoyed, and one of the members of the Second City that was hosting the auditions, and he said to Joan Rivers, describe what goes on in this room. And Joan Rivers said, a bunch of fat, middle-aged men sit here, judge people, and don't give women a chance. And she got the job based on that response. She was a bit of a force even then.
Joan Rivers spends 1 year at the Second City, honing her unique comedic style.
She said that when she did the Second City, she learned for the first time that what she thought was funny to other people as well.
When Joan returns to New York, she forms a musical comedy trio called Jim, Jake, and Joan. They're a hit in the Greenwich Village coffeehouse scene, performing at clubs like Upstairs, Downstairs, and The Bitter End, along with future luminaries George Carlin and Richard Pryor. This 1964 comedy sketch showcases Joan's early, good-natured comedic style.
Betty's class was divided into two groups. One brushed with Crest, the other used another leading dentifrice. Betty, would you mind telling us the results of these tests?
My group had 79% more cavities.
Even at this early stage in her career, Joan's wit and charm shine through. And on February 17th, 1965, she gets the break of a lifetime.
The Tonight Show was pretty much the holy grail for all comics. So that was the life-changing moment for her.
Kickstarting a 20-year friendship with Johnny Carson that sees her reach an incredible peak of stardom.
Joan was one of the most frequent faces on The Tonight Show.
She just all of a sudden was exploding everywhere.
Before seeing it all crash down around her.
We are at the former home of the great Joan Rivers. This is where Joan Rivers was living when she got the tragic news about her husband Edgar's suicide.
It's February 17th, 1965, and comedian Joan Rivers has finally caught a big break after years of bitter rejection. Not bad for the former Joan Valinsky, whose childhood growing up in Brooklyn and Westchester County was full of domestic tension. Feeling that she could never match her parents' high expectations for her, Joan had thrown herself into performing. And by the late 1950s, she was taking the train from her parents' home in Larchmont to Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan, where she printed cheap headshots from a photo booth in the station. And she pounded the pavement relentlessly with a drive and ambition that would have made most parents proud.
She was one of those overnight successes who spent 10 years beating her head against the wall to no success at all before she became successful.
After a stint at the Second City in Chicago, Joan finds herself back in New York. And on February 17, 1965, after years of struggle and turmoil, she lands a make-or-break gig, a chance to show her stuff to a nationwide audience on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, shot here at NBC Studios in Midtown Manhattan.
The Tonight Show was pretty much the holy grail for all comics.
Almost every major comedian you can name, even to this day, broke through in the 11:30 time slot.
She had tried over and over to get booked. They had rejected her 7 or 8 times.
Joan makes the most of her opportunity. She slays the audience, and Johnny loves her.
She had this appearance finally on The Tonight Show, and there was great chemistry with Johnny Carson, and he thought she was really funny. So that was the life-changing moment for her.
Marcia Teisling was Joan's personal assistant in the 1980s.
When Joan had her first appearance on The Tonight Show, Johnny said, "You're going to be a star." And that just clicked with her, and that was just everything. And from that day forward, she has always thanked him for that, you know, because it changed her life. She owed her career to Johnny.
Joan becomes a regular contributor on The Tonight Show. Her easy rapport with Johnny and her quick caustic wit are a natural fit for the late-night comedy show.
Joan was one of the most frequent faces on The Tonight Show from 1966 to 1986. You could argue that Johnny Carson and his Tonight Show were one of the reasons she became famous. The Tonight Show was a great format for Joan Rivers because she could do two things, both prepared material and then fast off the cuff. So Joan Rivers could improvise and be loose and talk to Johnny Carson in a way that would surprise him. She would give answers to his questions that were not prepared and make him laugh really, really hard. And so Johnny Carson became her greatest champion.
After her watershed moment on The Tonight Show, everything starts going right for Joan Rivers. She's contacted by film producer Edgar Rosenberg about a comedy writing gig. And days later, Edgar whisks her off to Jamaica to work on a film script. And just 3 days after they return to New York, they get married.
Edgar and Joan had one of those classic whirlwind romances. They, went off together to write some stuff, and, he proposed to her, and they were married in 4 days. Joan and Edgar, at that point, both thought they'd found the answer to their, prayers.
Edgar was Joan's rock. There's no question about it.
Joan and Edgar welcomed daughter Melissa to the family in 1968. And while Joan's career takes off in the early 1970s, headlining in Las Vegas, touring the country, and making regular appearances on The Tonight Show, Edgar's was stalling. And while he becomes Joan's business manager, she's the one bankrolling their increasingly opulent lifestyle. When NBC moves The Tonight Show from New York to Los Angeles in 1972, Joan, Edgar, and Melissa follow. And in 1974, the family moves into a sprawling English colonial mansion in Bel Air, right in the middle of one of the richest zip codes in the country. It's then that assistant Marcia Teisling starts working for Joan Rivers.
This is Joan Rivers' house. This is where I started. This is such a blast from the past. When I arrived, it just was huge. This house was enormous, and it was like intimidating. I was lost. I couldn't even find where my bedroom was. It was crazy. I'm so excited to see the inside. There's so many memories in there. I can't wait. This is gonna be great. Wow. This is weird. I'm speechless. This was the library, and I'm pretty sure this is where she always had tea with everybody. It's completely different. Wow, now this is interesting. She sat here. She had a little bell, so she'd ring the bell here. Whoever was working that night for the dinner would come out with whatever is needed, or the next course or something like that. Coming in through here was our main office. Wow, it's completely different. There was a massive desk here. People that were typing jokes were over there. And then Edgar's desk was here, and it was huge. Behind this door, Joan Rivers used to keep her files of jokes. So when she went in there, she would pull out a drawer on Elizabeth Taylor, and there'd be just hundreds of jokes on her. Pull out a drawer on, it was all alphabetized, and that's what we did. We typed them on little cards, filed them away, and so whenever she did a routine, Joan would go in there and pull out whatever jokes she needed for that routine. There's just so many memories here, and so many good memories.
By the mid-'80s, Joan Rivers is Johnny Carson's permanent guest host. And when Johnny contemplates retirement, speculation runs rampant about who will replace him. Joan finds herself as a frontrunner, along with comedians Gary Shandling and Jay Leno, for the most coveted job in late-night television. But, like everything else in Joan's life, it wouldn't come easy.
Somebody leaked her a memo that was supposedly from the brass at NBC, giving a list of 10 people who might replace Carson when he retired, and it was a list of 10 men's names, and she wasn't even on the list. And she flipped out, and she thought, oh my God, you know, they're just gonna screw me, and I'm not gonna get the show.
Convinced that NBC isn't going to hire a woman to host the show, Joan turns to the chairman and CEO of the brand new Fox network, Barry Diller, who had made her an offer she couldn't refuse, to host her own late-night talk show on Fox for much more money than she was getting at NBC. The problem was the show was scheduled to air in the same time slot as The Tonight Show.
Joan Rivers wanted to tell Johnny Carson herself, supposedly, but it hit the press first. So she phoned him and wanted to tell him, and he had already heard, and she started to talk, and he hung up on her and never talked to her again.
Carson never forgave her and banished her from NBC and The Tonight Show. She wasn't back on until long after his death.
You know, I just think she felt bad how it all went down.
But the new gig at Fox is no panacea for Joan Rivers. In fact, The Late Show starring Joan Rivers is a complete debacle. With husband Edgar serving as executive producer, the show is a major flop.
It bombed. She and Edgar felt that they weren't given the resources or the time to make a good show. Barry Diller feels that they screwed it up.
Apparently, Edgar was being micromanaged by the Fox network, who kind of didn't treat him with respect and were telling him what to do.
The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers, is canceled after less than a year. Suddenly, Joan and Edgar find themselves jobless, with a mansion and stable of staff to bankroll. Edgar, feeling responsible for the mess, sinks into a deep depression.
Edgar wanted to be a powerful person in the entertainment industry, and he had failed to become that.
Edgar went into a severe depression. I mean, I think he blamed himself for the show. He was blaming himself for Joan's career, everything changed.
It's the lowest point of Joan's life, but things are about to get even worse.
Melissa just came through the door and said, Mommy, Daddy killed himself. And Joan just dropped to her knees. She was just completely lost and scared.
And Joan Rivers has to dig herself out of a huge hole.
She found out she was $37 million in debt. Everything in her life blew up at the same moment. She seriously considered killing herself.
For every performer, there were places where life-changing events happened, events that shaped and impacted who they became. For outspoken comedian Joan Rivers, it was her home and Adelphi Academy in Brooklyn, Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan, and the stately Bel Air mansion she shared with her husband Edgar and daughter Melissa. The home was a status symbol, indicating that Joan Rivers had made it. She'd overcome adversity and a decade of rejection to become both a trailblazing comedian and the protege of Tonight Show host Johnny Carson. She was poised to become Johnny's replacement after his retirement, but she gambled and took a show with the rival Fox network instead, ending her relationship with Johnny. And when the Fox show bombed, her husband and producer Edgar fell into a deep depression from which he'd never emerge.
I think a lot of it they blamed Edgar for, which created more of a depression for Edgar.
When Edgar and Joan were fired from the Fox show, Joan, by that time, was pretty fed up with Edgar and tired of having this husband who was depressed. And so she told him that she wanted a divorce. And Edgar was in despair and also probably pretty angry, and he killed himself in a hotel room in Philadelphia.
Marcia Teisling remembers the moment that Joan first heard the horrible news.
Melissa bolted through the door and she said, Mommy, Daddy's dead. And Joan just literally just dropped to her knees. It was really hard.
After Edgar's death, Joan and Melissa performed the Jewish religious practice of sitting Shiva. a week-long period of mourning following a loved one's death. During this time, family members traditionally gather in their home to receive visitors. Chris Epting is an author and pop culture expert.
We are at the former home of the great Joan Rivers. This is where Joan Rivers was living when she got the tragic news about her husband Edgar's suicide in 1987. After the memorial services, there was all these things in the news about the hundreds of people that converged here, celebrities, politicians, dignitaries. That was the amount of respect and love they had for Joan Rivers. She was so self-deprecating. I think people like that honesty, and that was the essence of Joan Rivers. I think that's why there were so many hundreds of people here to help, help her grieve in the loss of her husband at this site.
Joan's life continues to spiral downwards when she discovers Edgar's disastrous financial entanglements.
She found out that having earned, vast amounts of money for a couple of decades, her husband, who was also her business manager, had squandered the money on bad investments, and instead of being a rich widow, she was $37 million in debt. So it's like everything in her life blew up at the same moment, and she felt that there was no reason to keep going, that everything was hopeless and there was no point to anything. She seriously considered killing herself.
It's a stunning reversal of fortune, but Joan doesn't quit, and showing her trademark resilience and tenacity, she plots her comeback.
Joan Rivers is fascinating for that reason, because she's that old cliche about the phoenix rising from the ashes. Again and again and again. In a short amount of time, you were seeing her on TV again. She was back to doing stand-up. She would appear on David Letterman's program.
Her motto was, never quit, never give up, never, 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 and it would be all in capital letters with about 18 exclamation points. And she was really vehement about it.
Joan throws herself into her work, taking any job she can get.
She got cast in a show called Broadway Bound. She was thrilled about that. She had never acted on Broadway before in a serious play. And she started writing books, and she did a radio show, and she did a daytime talk show. She was so desperate for money that when QVC and televised home shopping was just starting up, it was pretty tacky, and a lot of people wouldn't have done it, but they approached her about selling things on television, and she would jump at the chance to earn a paycheck any way she could.
Joan's decision to diversify pays off. And by the mid-90s, she's built up a mini business empire and is making more money than ever before. She finds herself back in her hometown of New York, and the city is quick to embrace her.
Joan was such a New Yorker. She embodied this raw, tough, funny New Yorker view on things. She walked down the street and everybody felt that they knew her and welcomed her. She was part of the city.
Tony Tripoli is a comedian and was the head writer on Joan's E! Network show, Fashion Police.
She loved New York so much. Being in New York City with Joan Rivers was like walking through Disneyland with Mickey Mouse. Like everyone I saw, big, frightening New York City cops on horseback jump off their horses and let the horses just continue, and they would run over and be like, Joan, I love you! Like, and they wanted pictures and they would get teary.
In 1994, Joan is nominated for a Tony Award for Sally Marr and Her Escorts, and during the play's run, she becomes a regular at the legendary Joe Allen restaurant on West 46th Street.
The restaurant we're in right now is Joe Allen's on 46th and 8th, and this is a restaurant that Joan would always come to. She loved to come here because she said this is where the real working class theater people, the real performers, knowing that she would come here to this restaurant all the time and probably get a lot of her inspiration here. Like, she'd be sitting, maybe she even sat at this table writing jokes. Like, it makes me just want to sort of like lick the table. She would always get the banana cream pie, which, by the way, we ordered. And where the hell is it? Where's our pie? I can feel like she's present in the room. And I feel like if she was here right now, she'd be like, what are you wearing?
Looking good, Joan.
Joan's resurgence after Edgar's suicide is remarkable, but nagging insecurities from her childhood persist. She feels that she's not successful enough, thin enough, or pretty enough, and her crutch is plastic surgery.
Honestly, I think Joan's obsession with plastic surgery is because of her low self-esteem.
Joan really, truly believed that she was not pretty. She had this weird curse that when she looked in the mirror, she just really saw this unworthy monster.
She completely transformed herself. She had dozens and maybe hundreds of procedures over the years. Nobody, not even her daughter, knows how many she actually had.
Joan's fascination with body-altering plastic surgery is obvious to everyone she works with.
She would come in and be like, okay, let's write these jokes. And it was just like, oh my God, did they just take you out of the kiln? Like, she just looked like, you know, she'd just been on the surface of the sun.
She just believed in it wholeheartedly. She believes that someone should, if it's gonna make them feel better, that they should improve themselves. You know, if that's what it takes to make you feel better, do it.
Joan's obsession with her looks completely transforms her appearance in the last 30 years of her life. A final act that sees her opulent lifestyle get taken to the extreme.
She bought her dream home, which everyone described as Versailles.
She used to say about that apartment, this is how Marie Antoinette would have lived if she had money.
But it was going to be a routine elective surgery at a clinic on the Upper East Side that was going to end her life prematurely. By the mid-1990s, groundbreaking entertainer Joan Rivers had re-established herself as a comedic tour de force after a dramatic fallout with Johnny Carson and the suicide of her husband Edgar. She had overcome grief, depression, and millions of dollars of debt with a say yes to any job attitude and an intense desire to prove everyone wrong. After 20 years in exile on the West Coast in the stately Bel Air mansion, the quintessential New Yorker returned home. She moved into an opulent penthouse in a building on East 62nd Street on the Upper East Side. It was a home fit for comedy royalty.
She bought her dream home, which everyone described as Versailles. You know, the place was gilded everything.
She used to say about that apartment, this is how Marie Antoinette would have lived if she had money.
Joan definitely loved opulence and luxury, but not in a stuffy way. Never stuffy, never pretentious, never lording it over anyone. Nothing like that.
Joan's fortune had come from diversification. In the early 90s, still trying to dig herself out of a $37 million hole, she starts selling jewelry, clothing, and beauty products on the QVC shopping channel.
She started this business of designing jewelry and clothing and selling it on QVC. And in her 60s and 70s, she built it into a billion-dollar business.
In 1996, Joan brings her trademark snark to the red carpet for the first time when she's hired as a correspondent for the E! Network.
She got a gig commenting on, you know, fashion at red carpet ceremonies. And she was not a fashion expert. She liked to spend money on fashion, but she didn't know much about it. And she brought on her daughter as her straight man because all she really wanted to do was crack jokes. And when she would go up to people, and she became famous for going up to people and sticking a microphone in their face and saying, "Who are you wearing?" It was because she didn't know. And it started to become so popular that it really created this whole new genre of television programming that really hadn't existed before.
Joan roasts celebrities on the red carpet for nearly 20 years, and surprisingly, it makes her even more popular with the Hollywood elite, with many stars wearing Joan's insults as a badge of honor.
I witnessed many celebrities run up to Joan and say, I knew I was famous when you made fun of me the first time. That was it. That's when I was like, wow, I am a celebrity now. I'm in that club.
And she never stops working, ever. Long after she has enough money to retire, an incredibly wealthy woman, she keeps on going.
She loved the work. The work was her favorite thing about being alive.
She wrote, you know, more than a dozen best-selling books. She was a Hollywood screenwriter. She was one of the first women directors. She was a playwright. She had radio shows. She had television shows. She had reality shows. And of course, throughout all of this, she's performing comedy in, you know, every dive that would have her all the way, you know, across the country and flying out on, you know, red eyes with her little wheelie suitcase at 80.
But everything comes to a crashing halt on August 28, 2014, when Joan enters what used to be Yorkville Endoscopy on the Upper East Side for a routine throat operation.
She had an endoscopy. She had it performed at a clinic where there wasn't a full hospital, you know, infrastructure for backup when something went wrong, and something went wrong.
I've been told by a number of other doctors that it's very common when you put, you know, a camera down to do this scope that the person's throat seizes, and there's a certain drug that you have there on the crash cart. As I understand it, at some point, Joan's, you know, throat seized, and they did not have this drug in the room, much less the building.
Unable to breathe, there's no oxygen getting to Joan's brain. She's rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital and put into a medically induced coma. Joan Rivers dies on September 4th, 2014, having never awakened from the coma.
I didn't believe she was gonna die. I really didn't. I thought, she's gonna make it, you know? And she didn't. That was hard.
I felt so sad. And I think incredulous. She was so fully alive. It was impossible to believe that she had passed away.
In the wake of Joan Rivers' death, thoughts turned to her massive legacy, especially her impact on female comedians.
I have to tell you, Joan hated talking about how she had opened the door, paved the way for other female. She was like, F them, I'm still here killing it. They can figure it out for themselves. Nobody helped me.
She was so brave and bold, and she was such a huge personality. She has more balls than any male comic I've ever met.
Joan Rivers left an incredible mark on show business. We have comedy records, we have television episodes, we have her doing stand-up, her doing movies. She left us with so much.
Joan Rivers led an incredibly rich and influential life, which was propelled by fascinating locations scattered around New York and Los Angeles. Her childhood home in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where her fractured relationship with her mother drives her to a life in the performing arts. Grand Central Terminal, where the headshots she took at a photo booth helped kickstart her career in show business. Rockefeller Center, site of NBC Studios, where she got her big break on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. The Bel Air estate that proved to the world that she had made it, and the site of her biggest tragedy, the suicide of her husband Edgar. And her palatial penthouse in Manhattan, scene of her remarkable late-life resurgence, and a symbol of her status as a comedy legend.
Joan Rivers had such tenacity and strength. You know, this tough New York City girl who never took no for an answer. You know, she came of age in the 60s up against very good comedians, Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby, Woody Allen. And she had to, as a woman in the 60s, to survive that, you know, is a testament, I think, to her strength.